All right. There we go. Let's try that again. Here. I bet. Okay. Great. Wonderful. Let's see if we can get this thing rocking and rolling here. That's right. Another episode of Better Call Rizal. And today's series, special edition for Indigenous Day, Columbus Day, and the new one that I want to tell everybody about, Columbo Day, which is the Indigenous Columbus. On the other side, where Magellan, Pigafetta, and all them arrived and met on their first island, Chief Columbo and his 5 wives. And we're going to talk a little bit about all 3 today and try to find some common ground to hopefully, you know, um, shed a little bit more love, a little bit more happiness, and a little bit more joy in the world, you know. And what it is that uh, little tiny differences sometimes get blown out of proportion. But if we're rooted and founded in the truth and light, I think we get a lot farther, a lot quicker. And that's always been my tact. So we got a trusty, you know, I'm getting old, but I can still do it. And our first attempt has gotten set down. So, and who am I? I'm a nobody. I have no followers. Nobody can watch this. Nobody can see this. So why are they shutting me down? I'm literally like nobody can see this. I know that, except for the little ghosties. And what's that? What do they call themselves? Oh, they can talk to dead people, right? And so I'm gonna bill you guys and for communication services, and you should be getting the invoice soon. So yeah, you guys better pay up, all right? Because I know the message is getting out there, but it's not being received as it was put out. If you get what I'm saying. So first and foremost, you know, I don't want to apologize, folks that took it the wrong way. Last time, you know, I guess I was a little bit out of shape, and well, maybe it had a right to be. But I just do want to say that, you know, I love everybody, you know, and I just want positive energy and truth and light and fair shake. That's all. My grandpa, Ray Popo, he uh, he always taught me to be a straight shooter. And well, if you ain't a straight shooter, you ain't gonna hit nothing. And I'm always aiming for truth, light, folks coming together to make a better way. And we can make a better way today if we all came together and chose to do so. And that's always my mission. So, you know, you see a lot of different names out there. Mom and them, they used to always call me Chase. I don't know why the hell my dad, he just would call me Hobo, which I don't know. Maybe he's one of them fortune telling types that, uh, you know, knows how to predict the future because it's exactly what happened. So while we're celebrating Columbus, Indigenous, and Columbo Day, I just also want to put it out there that it's also kind of a solemn celebration because it's me and my family's, my wife and 3 children's 111th day homeless, living in a shelter here in Utah. And we, when we look at the bright side, we say, yeah, we're all together. And we that's the main goal. That's the most important thing, is that we're all together. But the fact that um, that had to be the case in the first place, to me, is absolutely heinous and represents some sort of tyrannical element, which maybe we'll get into later. But first, let's get into history. This is the Aetaneo Rizal. Some call it, when we're able to do science and tech, the Rizal Institute of Technology. I'd really just like to merge them into two and put just one big giant edifice on top of the mountain there, Mount Olympus. Look how beautiful this is. And just name it Rizal. And well, we can start it off like where I got my first degree at, my second degree at. We'll call it um, an all-women's school. Yeah, like Humboldt State used to be. I mean, sorry, California Polytechnic University, Humboldt. And that's where I got my first or my second anthropology degree right there. But I gave my first class as a professor, my personal opinion, at Santa Rosa Junior College when I got my social and behavioral sciences degree in humanities. And that was on presentation on the Book of Job. And that was way back in 2007. But for whatever reason, because I prefer to tell it straight, teach straight, they call me, I guess, one of those black sheep or banned list or OG shadow ban or something like that. I'm not sure. But so now I'm just kind of rambling, skateboarding, homeless dude in America. But let's get back to the subject. Let me sit down here for a minute. All right. Got a trusty skateboard, just in case we have to hit the road real quick. But like I said, now that I know we got at least a signal of some sort, what I want to do is I want to say thank you and give eternal gratitude to the folks of Utah and the elements that founded this, both the indigenous and the new settlers that came here. I want to give thank you to both of those folks because really, in my studies, I've studied all over the place in the UAE, in Spain, I've been doing research projects everywhere in America, of course, in the Philippines, just everywhere. And I found a lot of real beautiful, real lovely cultures and histories that you didn't really get to glimpse at unless you went to those places. Okay. And totally 100% putting this out there is that I know nobody sees this now. It's totally blacklisted, zero following, except for the little ghosties that are like in the in between, but they don't get counted like me. Uh, but I'm hoping that one day it can reach somebody that's still living, so as that they don't make the same mistakes as was made before. Okay. And so while sometimes it seems like I'm kind of rambling on, it's because I have like a million stories and histories I'd like to fix and tell, and like 100,000 things I'd like to talk about with everybody in different areas and sectors. But I've never been allowed to talk to any of them. So it's a lot of like ideas going here and there, and I'm trying to keep them sharp and focused for everybody. Okay. So whoever this reaches, if it ever does in the future, because I know it is in some kind of way, uh, I hope y'all do something good and productive with it. So Columbus, Columbus Day, Indigenous Day, um, Columbo Day. I started this journey that eventually uncovered this real interesting historical narrative when I was kind of searching for myself, right? Um, so, like I said before, when I was raised by my nana and papo, they were from Alabama. They raised me in California, and I always had that thing because my cousins and everybody I was around my furthest memories. They were all like redheaded, like freckles, green eyed, blue eyed, like. And I was just when I was a kid, I was a total little look like a total little dark brown Indian boy, kind of thing. But I was never able to like see anybody else that was like me. I guess you could say in the way I was raised up. I'd say with low middle class, always been poor, dirt poor, never had anything in the bank account, never was allowed to own anything. in any kind of way, even though I would do the steps, right? Like get your degrees, do this and that, this and that. You would just, growing up, always door slammed in the face. I was like, this is so strange. But, anyways, so this like put something in me where I was like, where am I from? How am I really connected to these people? So I would ask my grandparents, and the oldest answer I can remember was my grandma. She told me I was Comanche, that I was Comanche Indian. My grandpa said it had something to do with the Spanish, and then eventually it became something. Um, like way down the road, I remember the story evolving into you're Filipino, and then like eventually, like when I got older, I was introduced to like a Filipino side of the family and whatnot, and um, and then that story kind of evolved that way, right? So like I always had this thing like trying to figure it out because there was always something off about the story, and in 2015, I ended up. Putting my foot down and saying, well, I got to figure this thing out because this is like something that's really strange. A lot of strange things happening. And I moved to the Philippines. And eventually, fast forward, I ended up basically, once you get to a place where the self disintegrates, you basically become one with everything else. All right. And so it's an idea I'd like to flesh out and talk to about at some point, hopefully, if I'm still around too. But you basically have an extremely difficult time analyzing something selfish or something about the self. So anything like for me or about me or to, like, you can only, once you like pull up so far or you go in so deep, you can only analyze things on large scale kind of vistas. And so that's what ended up happening coming back. And I was like, man, like even I thought it was like I was strange and uh, out of the norm before. Like when I came back, it was like, this is even more strange than I ever remembered it. But anyway, so I ended up going out to Spain, going to these places to do this research, right? And, and what I eventually found was I was trying to analyze, you know, I've always analyzed from the indigenous perspective and indigenous cultures. And so I found some of the oldest evidences in the Philippines. And that's not to say that there's not super old stuff here either, but it hasn't been allowed to be explored as it was in other places, you could say. I'm an anthropologist by profession, and one of my subgroups of anthropology is archaeology, paleoarchaeology, things of that nature. And I don't know, for whatever reason, they had somehow blocked any archaeology that was to be done at any kind of level lower than a certain point, right? Which was one of those early things I learned about that was really strange to me. Like, why would you not allow us to dig further if there's a possibility of things being there? So I ended up doing that in my own story, trying to figure out what's what in the Philippines. And I was like, man, this is some real strange stuff out here that's like, if you could put this together, you'd have an interesting story, right? So we all know about Columbus and him making it to the Americas and whatnot. And there was already people here, of course. So what had happened was that there's a real deep and complex story here that I hope comes out at some point. And what it is, it's like this. Okay, Columbus, in the modern narrative, discovered America. Of course, we know there was the indigenous peoples were here forever, and so I mean, it's a matter of terminology. But the other explorer, the most famous explorer, was, I guess you could say, Cortez and Magellan from the other side. So Cortez came in and he went into Mexico. We all know that story with Moctezuma and what happened there and everything. But the next step was Magellan, and he's the one that really like made the full circle, right? So it was Columbus, and then after Columbus was Magellan. So Columbus set his marker there down on the East Coast, or wherever he was landing in the Atlantic, in the Caribbean. And what had happened was when Magellan did it, I was starting to study him, and he went. He was already actually in the Philippines, Southeast Asia, Pacific. Like 30, the Portuguese and them and his cousins were there for 30 years. Like 30, 25, 30 years prior to them going the whole other opposite direction. So he's there, but what he's doing is he's getting this dude called Enrique. Okay, and Enrique was like one of the super smart, like indoctrinated, like super wise indigenous scholars that knew how to do all kinds of, cosmological mapping and navigations. He knew where all of the places were. He knew all the names. He knew how to speak a bunch of the languages of the peoples of all these places. Like, he was just like this, like brilliant polymath from the Southeast Asia Pacific. And so he gets him while he's like there 30 years, 20, 30 years earlier, whatever it was, and then they go back to Spain and Portugal with this dude Enrique, and like they do some whatever, brushing up on some stuff, and then they go the whole other opposite direction. So they came from the Philippines, all over Indonesia, Malaysia, all that area over there, Moluccas, all that. So they went all the way from there back westward to Spain and Portugal, and did like a pit stop and did some fresh brushing up on the Spanish and stuff, Portuguese, all that stuff with Enrique, who was an indigenous scholar. And then they went the whole other opposite direction, which we all know ended up being going through the Magellan Strait, right? And what is now the Magellan Strait, what they call the Magellan Strait. But one of the real interesting dynamics, so you got to remember, this is all happening in a real short period, brief of time. Like, this is all happening within one lifetime, one lifespan. Columbus, Magellan, Cortez, like this is all in one lifespan right here. And so what they do is they go from, after they set up the Nueva España there in Mexico, with Tenochtitlan and the capital there, they use that as like the jumping off pad to go into the Pacific, right? They had a bunch of failed attempts previously, but Magellan was the first actual successful one, and the first one that was actually chronicled properly. And so once they finally make it, Magellan and Enrique, that's kind of this joke I have. It's a terrible joke, but I'm terrible at comedy. But it's basically like, um, what happens when you get an Italian, a Spaniard, and a Filipino uh, walking into the bar on a Portuguese-made ship. A bold new world. I know it's stupid. It's stupid. I'm terrible at jokes. But anyways, so they finally make it all the way back around. And you know the first island that they put their flag down in was a little island called Mazua. And on this island, they met this tall tawny. They call him tawny. It's like basically like, it means like a golden brown chief, whose name was Colombo. It was, I swear, it was spelled the same way. It was pronounced the same way. It just they just put a K instead of a C, and they dropped the S. And they doubted on him. They said he was the most brilliant, amazing, handsome, like awesome chief and he had like 5 wives. That was all. That's why they call it now today, Limang Sawa, which in Tagalog means 5 wives. Okay, so this is one of those things that was a dynamic, all throughout history, really. I call it small group power dynamics, which is in modern times we call it polygamy or polygyny, or plural marriage or things of that nature. So this was an indigenous thing, and it was also a modern Western thing for an extremely long period of time. And hopefully we'll get into that in a little bit. But there's some real profound, powerful connection points here between Columbo, which they've given him all kinds of honorific titles like king, depending on the text. Some say he was like a Raja. Some say put Datu. In some texts, I've even seen it referred to as Raiden, like Raiden. Like this is like a sky god or thunder and lightning god in Japanese cultures, but I've seen it referred to and spelled as that in some of the oldest texts in the Philippines. So um, it really there's a whole big thing out there, and that's what I would really like to be doing. Actually, is I'm an anthropologist by profession, and my dream has always been to connect American systems with Southeast Asia Pacific systems and indigenous systems here as well, and work together because that's really when we'll start bringing out a lot of the truth about everything, and that's really what science and academia should be based in: is truth and light. Okay, and so that's one of these interesting things here about the Columbus Day, Indigenous Day, and what I'm going to call Columbo Day today. So we got the three uniting, okay, to make a better way, make a more lovely way. And so, in my opinion, what it's just it's one of those crazy things where it's like it's too many coincidences to be a coincidence. So like one of the base level things, once you peel back a layer or two, you find is that when you look at like ancient Latin, Columbu, which was Columbus's real name, he's just spelled with a C, and also Columbu on the other side that was spelled with a K. What was being done was what you call marcation and demarcation. Okay, so it's like two words that basically mean the same thing, except one of them is putting a marker down to take it away, or putting a marker down in a more invisible kind of way, right? And excuse me for this, but it's really a historical thing, 100%. I didn't get this from anywhere except for my own research and studies into histories and with indigenous ethnographic research being done on the ground. That's it. So, and my grandpa always told me uh, truth and light, shooting straight. He said, that's the only way to do it. And they had an old saying, the truth will set you free. Unfortunately, I feel like nowadays it'll probably get you imprisoned or strung up or tarred and feathered, one of the three. But I'm standing my ground in respect and honor of my grandfather, uh, Edwin B. Donaldson. And that's how I'm going to ride this one out. And so this is where another real interesting thing that's more modern for some of you folks on the Western perspective. It has to do with the Templars, okay? And the Templars, there's always this mystery about these folks and who was, these navigators and where they connected to them and where did they go? Why did they leave Jerusalem and the Holy Land? And I know I mentioned this a little bit previously before, and I was in more kind of a fanatical mood, I guess you could say, uh, given the circumstances, you could understand. But what they were doing initially, the Templars, is that they were protecting pilgrims. They were protecting people that believed in something sacred or they believed in something greater than themselves. And they had connected this in most recent times to this land that we now call Jerusalem or Israel, and they were protecting the pilgrims that went there, whether they were Arab or whether they were Jewish or whether they were Solomonites or whether they were whatever it was the case may be. They were protecting everybody, Mohammedans, all the people that were going there to worship. There was not any kind of division. That was not until later on that the divisive stuff came in. Um, but initially, it was just a group of people that wanted to protect the ability for people to worship whatever it is and however it is that they had worshipped in a peaceful and sacred way without being having the fear of harm, of being persecuted, or being criminalized, or being robbed, or being um, you know anything nasty happening to them when they're trying to go do something that they believe in regarding faith. That's it. So if there's any groups out there, whether you're, shout out to all the groups, the Knights of the Indigenous Tribes, the Ghost Dance Society, the Knights of Columbus, the Knights of Rizal, any kind of Masonic Teutonic orders, whatever it is, like we all know deep inside what is good and what we should be doing to try to make a better world. And that's all the Templars were doing starting out, was trying to protect that core element of what was good that anybody could innately, naturally feel that had not been already far deviated from the organic natural path. So I would just try to recommend for everybody coming together to protect just those basic ideals of what is good and what is natural and what feels good. And we all know what that is, right? So and it's like happiness. It's it's family, friends, it's whatever, however your tribe is made up of. Uh, like we all know what's good and positive, and we should just protect that core element. My grandfather, he had this real strong belief in the sanctity of the home, and that's kind of how I was brought up, you could say, because I wasn't a part of any church community. I wasn't a part of any type of religion or any type of like particular way. Um, so eventually, you find beauty and you find sacredness if you go through what I've been through in everything, and you find good things in everything. Unless they're obviously nasty things or negative things or harmful or hurtful things or oppressive and tyrannical things. And uh, so he had this thing about the sanctity of the home. Like he was a poor cotton farmer from Alabama, and what he had said was, when they took the church away, they basically took the church away, took everything else away, basically, kind of thing that was sacred, the family, everything. And then, really all you have left is what this core idea and true, like, internal belief I have is that the most important temple is the one you take with you everywhere you go. And so, when they strip you of all of those things that you find beautiful and sacred, you really have just that core element of like, if you have a home, like at least I can protect those elements within the home. Or, if they take your temple or church away, at least the sanctity of the home, they won't interfere or contaminate that. And he said, I remember him saying, like, once that's gone, once they remove the sanctity of the home, and like a government or other agencies or whatever has the ability to go into your home and take it from you or go into your home and desecrate it, he said, we're in a whole heap of trouble, basically. Um, and I'm trying to keep this as positive as possible. So we have to try to get back that sanctity of the home of like, let's not, um, let's not do like, we don't need to like do all those things to each other. That's not helpful or positive or protective of, the American values of what the founding fathers and mothers had intended for us. There's better ways to do it. And so the sanctity of the home, that he really believed in that. And so, like, even when the sanctity of the home is removed and you get pushed out into the wilderness and the cold, uh, what develops is you either become extremely sour and find like evil and negative energy in everything, or you find beauty and sacred nature in everything. And that's what had happened to me. in the Philippines. And I guess that's what's also led me to have such a hard time trying to come back here and see like all the stuff happening. Like, man, um, I don't know where we go from here, but I just know that we're gonna try to get that back. And so um, that's why I'm thankful. I'm thankful for here, you know, and you know, there's not a whole much more I want to touch on regarding the Columbus story, except for the fact that if there's any folks out there in the world still that do have a warm, a positive, a powerful, and productive heart and spirit to do what's right, to do things that are good, uh, and that if there's any good folks of faith, what I can say is that just in my personal opinion, you know, God is real. Jesus Christ was, is, and shall always be real. And I found that, interestingly enough, in a lot of the accounts all over the world, is this accounts of, yeah, we know his teachings. Yeah, we know we know of him. We know him directly, like in America, in the Pacific, in the Philippines. And we're like, they already knew about all this stuff, like, in him and everything. And yeah, and that's one of the things that I really enjoyed about learning about also after I got here about the Book of Mormon and Joseph Smith, which which was that like they also had that ideal of there's more, so much more to the story, and some things. Going back to that first lecture I gave at the Santa Rosa Junior College, which was about the Book of Jobs or whatever, what do you want to call it? What I had found was that there was inconsistencies, and that there were certain elements that were placed into some of these items long after, and they didn't make any sense to me, right? So getting to the cut and dry of it, what I had found is that in all of the mainstream, I guess you could say, dogmas, what I had found was that there was not only inconsistencies, but there was one or two things that I believe were based in some sort of deceptive element. And one of them that I can mention now to everybody is the necessity for artificial suffering. So that is one of the elements that you can find in all of the mainstream dogmas, whether it's Eastern or Western, that they either agreed on that one thing, like, okay, fine, we'll put this in here, this necessity for artificial dogma, or this necessity for artificial suffering. Uh, and if they didn't, all those religions went away, or either that, or they're on the brink of being totally wiped out and extinguished. Okay, and that's not only with dogmas, but that's also with governing structures. So let me explain. For example, you have, this is what I call SGPD, small group power dynamics. Okay, and this is something that artificial suffering squashes out fairly rapidly, or gives excuses for, or when it's totally not a necessity, and you totally do not need artificial. This is one of those things where I would love to debate Jordan Peterson on. Jordan, look, I love you, man, and I've been trying to understand you for a long time, and you have great stuff. I really do. I think you're amazing, brilliant, man. But that's one of those things I'd like to debate you on, which I'm sure I'll never get the chance to do. But if I did, I think I'd pretty much wipe you out. But the necessity for artificial suffering, I don't believe there's any need for it. Obviously, there's organic suffering, but it's when the power dynamics and the power governing structures that control all of the naturally or unnatural elements that seem natural, that are pushing things in a certain way. What happens is uh, they use that as the excuse. Like, oh yeah, it's just like you're so much tougher and stronger because we're making this environment super difficult for you and artificial difficult. No, it doesn't have to be like that. That's a total fallacy. That's a total fallacy, 100%. So if an organic natural event happens to you, that is something that we don't have control over, right? But if it's a manufactured event, or if it's an artificial event that is made for you to artificially experience suffering or pain, that is totally unnecessary in this world, and it's what's really pressurizing a lot of folks nowadays, including myself. So, and that's another saying anything bad about anybody. Like I said, I really admire the doctor, and I think he's got a lot of good things to say. But I think I would whoop him pretty good on most of his debate topics if he was ever willing to chat with me. And this is where I want to touch on something before I finish off the Columbus story, right? So they had these movies and all this stuff. One of them is called Idiocracy. This is what they're like. A lot of people meme about and like talk all this smack about and stuff like that, right? But I really don't believe in that at all. I think that's also one of those deceptive things. I think you could say democracy, you could say republic, you could say all kinds of things, but really, what this is, it's a Freudian ideal, I guess you could say. If I had to cite this, I'd probably say Dr. Ambetha Campo. Uh, um, uh, this is what you would call idocracy. Okay, this is what I call idocracy. Okay, and this is what I do. I've made my whole new genre of anthropology. It's called Promethean anthropology. And what it does is it studies broken chains and missing links. Because within those little time frames and within those little things of ideals that you find the remnants of broken chain that's on the ground, scattered in the strata, or you find something of a missing link that's unsolved, that's really important or should be. You find some extremely interesting details, and that you can really actually flesh out a lot of our story when you analyze those in kind of like the way of like a true detective, or like some sort of something like that, Sherlock Holmes type of thing, Columbo type of thing. Um, so like when I'm studying or researching something else or someone or some other ideal, it's easy for me to do that. I can do that, but anything about myself, it's not a thing anymore, because you had to dissolve the self to like go through the center of the earth out the other side.